Arnold Schwarzenegger was the golden boy of bodybuilding, charming, unstoppable, and larger than life. Mike Mentzer was his opposite, intense, methodical, and determined to rewrite the rules with his heavy-duty training. The collision of these two forces went beyond the mere physical impact. It was a war of egos, philosophies, and raw pride. Their feud boiled over during the infamous 1980 Mr. Olympia, a night that left scars on bodybuilding forever. But what made Mentzer's hatred for Arnold so personal? The answer lies deeper than a trophy, and it's far more explosive. Before the drama, before the controversy, one man owned bodybuilding completely, and his grip on the sport was about to create the biggest enemy of his career. In 1970, a 23-year-old Arnold Schwarzenegger stepped onto the Mr. Olympia stage and shocked the bodybuilding world. He won the title that night, becoming the youngest champion in Olympia history.
He's known to have a very, very heavy upper body, as we can see here. Might notice the muscle highlights.
But that was only the start. From 1970 to 1975, Arnold ruled the sport completely, winning 6 Mr. Olympia titles in a row. No one could match his size, shape, or confidence. He set a new standard for what a bodybuilding champion should look like. Arnold had a presence that captivated everyone, drawing attention wherever he went. On stage, he had a charisma that made crowds love him and judges notice him. He also played mental games with his rivals, teasing and joking in a way that kept them off balance. Arnold combined physical strength with a sharp mind. Facing him meant confronting both his skill and his strategy, giving him a clear advantage. By 1975, Arnold had done it all in bodybuilding. He had nothing left to prove. After winning his 6th straight Olympia that year, he announced his retirement. But Arnold wasn't finished with the spotlight. He had bigger dreams. He wanted to become a movie star, and soon, the world would see him not only as a bodybuilding champion, but as a celebrity. That moment came in 1977, with the release of the documentary Pumping Iron. The film followed Arnold's final Olympia battle in South Africa, where he faced Lou Ferrigno and Serge Nubret. He had muscles, but that wasn't enough. Drama, rivalry, and personality made him memorable. And nobody shined brighter on camera than Arnold. His confidence, humor, and memorable one-liners made him unforgettable. Pumping Iron did something no bodybuilding show had ever done before. It brought the sport into the mainstream. Suddenly, weight training wasn't just for bodybuilders. It became popular with everyday people. Gyms filled up. Fitness became cool. And Arnold was the man leading the charge. The film changed everything. Suddenly, the whole world knew him, not just bodybuilding fans. By the late 1970s, Arnold had become more than just a 6-time Mr. Olympia. He had become the face of bodybuilding itself. He was the champion who turned a small, niche sport into something millions cared about. His mix of athletic greatness, charisma, and showmanship made him a global icon. For Mike Mentzer and other rivals, the stage with Arnold held more than a trophy. It was a battle against a legend whose presence defined the sport. Arnold represented everything bodybuilding had always been. Mike Mentzer was quietly developing everything it could become. Mike Mentzer was different from other bodybuilders from the very start. He was born in Ephrata, Pennsylvania, in 1951. While other teens spent time on sports and hanging out with friends, Mike was busy reading philosophy books. He was deeply curious about how the world really worked. Ayn Rand was the thinker who changed the way Mike saw life. Her books, Atlas Shrugged and The Fountainhead, taught him to think for himself and ask questions. Rand believed in using reason and logic, instead of just following the crowd. Her ideas became the base for how Mike lived, guiding every choice he made in bodybuilding and in life. Mike's younger brother Ray became his training partner and test subject. The two brothers would spend hours talking about training ideas. Mike created the theories, and Ray helped prove they worked in real life. They had a special bond that went beyond being brothers. They were partners in trying to change how people thought about building muscle. During Arnold Schwarzenegger's reign from 1970 to 1975, Mike watched every contest with a critical eye. While fans cheered Arnold's 6 straight Mr. Olympia wins, Mike studied his methods and found problems. Arnold's workouts lasted 3 to 4 hours. He did 20 to 30 sets per body part. His training represented everything Mike thought was wrong with bodybuilding. Mike believed Arnold's approach was wasteful and harmful. If you truly pushed your muscles to complete failure, additional sets would hurt your progress rather than help it. Arnold's success came from his genetics and personality, and not from his training methods. This conviction drove Mike to develop a completely different system. Heavy-duty training was born from these observations. Mike's method used short, intense workouts. Where Arnold might do 25 sets for chest muscles, Mike recommended only 6 to 9 sets pushed to absolute failure. Every rep had to count. Every set had to be perfect. There was no room for wasted motion or empty volume. Mike's philosophy background made him hate what bodybuilders called bro science. This was gym folklore passed down from person to person without any proof. Bodybuilders did certain exercises because someone told them to, not because anyone had tested whether they worked. Mike demanded evidence for everything. If a training method couldn't be explained logically, he rejected it. This scientific thinking extended to his business life. Mike began training clients using heavy-duty principles. He carefully tracked their progress and documented results. His methods produced amazing transformations, but more importantly, they proved his theories were correct. Clients gained muscle faster and with less time in the gym. The biggest moment in Mike's career came at the 1978 Mr. Universe contest. He accomplished something that had never happened before in bodybuilding history: a perfect score. The perfect score proved that Mike's ideas worked. Intelligence and systematic thinking had beaten traditional methods. The victory showed the bodybuilding world that there was a better way to train, a smarter way to build muscle, and a more efficient path to success. By 1980, Mike had transformed from a curious teenager reading philosophy books into bodybuilding's most dangerous challenger. He had both the physical tools and the mental weapons to take on Arnold and change the sport forever. His rational approach to training was ready to clash with bodybuilding's old traditions, and Mike was prepared for the battle that lay ahead. Just 24 hours before the biggest contest of the year, a phone call shattered Mike Mentzer's world. Mike Mentzer had spent 2 years preparing for this moment. The 1980 Mr. Olympia in Sydney, Australia was supposed to be his crowning achievement. After his perfect score at the 1978 Mr. Universe, he had refined his heavy-duty training system, pushed his physique to new heights, and built a philosophy that would revolutionize bodybuilding. This was his time. Then came the call that changed everything. Arnold Schwarzenegger, the man who had dominated bodybuilding for 6 years before retiring in 1975, was coming back. Just 1 day before the contest, with no warning, no proper preparation period, no respect for the athletes who had been grinding for months, Arnold announced his return. For Mike, this wasn't just disappointing news. It represented everything he believed was wrong with competitive bodybuilding. While other competitors might have been excited by Arnold's celebrity presence, Mike viewed the last-minute entry as fundamentally unfair to athletes who had been preparing for months. Mike had studied Arnold's training methods throughout his career and developed his heavy-duty system as a direct philosophical challenge to Arnold's high-volume approach. Where Arnold's training relied on extended gym sessions with multiple sets, Mike advocated brief, intensely focused workouts taken to complete muscular failure. This contest represented an opportunity to prove which training philosophy produced superior results. The announcement changed everything for the competitors who had been expecting a fair shot at the title. Tensions reached a breaking point. The confrontation escalated to the point where other competitors and officials had to intervene before it became physical. Witnesses described the atmosphere as extremely tense, with Mike's methodical, intellectual approach clashing against Arnold's charismatic dominance of the room. For Mike, This confrontation represented more than personal rivalry. He saw it as a battle between two competing visions of bodybuilding, one based on scientific training principles and fair competition, and another driven by politics and celebrity status. The incident set the stage for what would become one of the most controversial contests in bodybuilding history, with Mike positioned as the primary voice, challenging both Arnold's return and the sport's judging integrity. What happened next was so shocking that grown men walked off stage in disgust, and the sport would never be the same. The tension began even before the athletes stepped on stage. That year, 16 competitors had entered, and 15 of them signed a petition asking the IFBB to combine the weight classes into one open division. This meant everyone, regardless of size, would battle head-to-head for a single Olympia crown. But there was one man who refused to sign: Arnold Schwarzenegger. Arnold's refusal only fueled suspicion among the athletes. Many believed that he was already working behind the scenes with officials, and that the contest was being shaped in his favor. Mike Mentzer, who was expected to be a top challenger, was especially angry. The night before the show, Mentzer tried to physically confront Arnold during a heated meeting. Reports say the two nearly came to blows before other bodybuilders separated them. Arnold also played his famous psychological games at the press conference. He cracked jokes, downplayed his rivals, and acted as though victory was already his. Some laughed along, but others felt he was mocking the entire competition. The atmosphere leading into show day was thick with distrust and frustration. When Arnold finally walked on stage, many were shocked, not by his greatness, but by his condition. Compared to his prime, Arnold was only at about 80 to 90% of what fans remembered. His upper body still looked impressive, but his legs were flat, his triceps lacked sharpness, and his midsection looked less tight than before. Most observers agreed Arnold was not at his best. Competitors like Frank Zane, Chris Dickerson, Mike Mentzer, and Boya Ko appeared sharper and better prepared. The general consensus backstage and among fans was that Arnold would not be a serious threat to the title. But as the judging rounds continued, something strange happened. One by one, fan favorites were eliminated. Frank Zane, despite his symmetry, was pushed aside. Mike Mentzer, fresh off his perfect score at the 1978 Mr. Universe, didn't even make the final two. Boya Ko, another strong contender, was overlooked as well. The showdown came down to Chris Dickerson versus Arnold Schwarzenegger. Dickerson was in peak shape, polished, balanced, and conditioned. Arnold, on the other hand, looked good, but far from his old unbeatable self. Still, when the results were announced, the judges crowned Arnold the 1980 Mr. Olympia champion. Dickerson was in peak shape, polished, balanced, and conditioned. Arnold, on the other hand, looked good, but far from his old unbeatable self. Still, when the results were announced, the judges crowned Arnold the 1980 Mr. Olympia champion.
Mr. Olympia 1980, Arnold Schwarzenegger.
He has that ability to make you love and like him and want to vote for him.
The reaction was immediate and explosive. Many in the crowd booed loudly, while some competitors refused to even stay on stage for the traditional lineup. Several athletes stormed off in protest, unable to believe the outcome. The decision left the bodybuilding world in shock and sparked a controversy that has never fully cooled down. For fans, the 1980 Olympia remains a turning point, a night when politics, favoritism, and Arnold's towering reputation seemed to matter more than the physiques on stage. The trophy ceremony was over, but the real battle was just beginning, and it would tear bodybuilding apart from the inside. The 1980 Mr. Olympia didn't end when Arnold raised the trophy. It exploded into one of the most bitter fallouts bodybuilding had ever seen. The shock of the decision rippled through the athletes, the fans, and even the fitness industry itself. For many competitors, the result was too much to accept. Some of the sport's biggest names walked away in disgust. Frank Zane, who had ruled the Olympia stage for 3 years before Arnold's comeback, never returned to the Olympia again. Mike Mentzer, furious at both the judging and Arnold's presence, also stepped away from the competition. Others, like Boyer Coe, expressed open frustration and would later admit that the 1980 contest destroyed much of their faith in the system. The controversy also damaged bodybuilding's image outside of the sport. Television networks, which had begun showing more interest in fitness events during the late 1970s, distanced themselves from the Olympia after the backlash. Sponsors and promoters worried that bodybuilding was becoming less about athletic fairness and more about politics. For a sport trying to break into the mainstream, this was a serious blow. Magazines, which were the main source of bodybuilding news at the time, faced pressure from both sides. Some publications openly criticized the decision, questioning how Arnold could have won when his condition clearly wasn't equal to rivals like Chris Dickerson or Mike Mentzer. Others, tied closely to the IFBB and Arnold himself, printed glowing reviews of the contest and downplayed the anger. Fan letters poured in, many of them furious, but not all were published. Editors often censored or softened the tone of these testimonials to protect relationships with sponsors and bodybuilding officials. The uproar grew so large that the IFBB had to act. To restore trust, they introduced new judging rules in the years that followed. These changes were designed to make the scoring process more transparent and to prevent the kind of behind-the-scenes favoritism many believed had decided the 1980 Olympia. Judges were told to focus more on objective criteria like symmetry, definition, and proportion, rather than reputation or personality. Still, for many fans and athletes, the damage was already done. The 1980 Olympia became a symbol of what could go wrong when politics entered the sport. Instead of celebrating bodybuilding's growth, the industry spent years defending itself against accusations of corruption. For Mike Mentzer, and for many others, that single night in Sydney would never be forgotten or forgiven. While others stayed quiet, one man refused to let it go, and his anger would burn for the next 21 years. After the 1980 Mr. Olympia, Mike Mentzer became one of the strongest voices against the contest. Many bodybuilders were upset, but Mentzer stood out because he never stopped talking about it. For him, the Sydney show was not just a bad decision, it was proof that bodybuilding was no longer fair. Mentzer believed bodybuilding should be judged by clear rules: muscle size, balance, shape, and conditioning. In his view, Arnold did not meet these standards in 1980. His legs and triceps looked weaker, his midsection was softer, and overall, he was far from his prime. Compared to athletes like Chris Dickerson or Mentzer himself, Arnold looked out of place. Mentzer summed up his anger with one famous line: "Only the 7 judges and his closest friends saw Arnold as the winner." Many bodybuilders were upset, but Mentzer stood out because he never stopped talking about it. This statement captured what many already felt, that Arnold had won because of his name and influence, not because of his physique on stage. Mentzer often compared bodybuilding to other judge sports, like gymnastics or figure skating. Those sports used strict scoring systems that made results more objective. Bodybuilding, on the other hand, allowed judges to use personal opinions, which left space for bias and politics. To Mentzer, this was a major weakness in the sport. Even as years passed, Mentzer never changed his position. In interviews, books, and seminars, he always returned to 1980 as the moment bodybuilding lost its credibility. Until his death in 2001, he stood firm. Arnold should not have won. Because of this, Mentzer's legacy was not just about his muscles or his heavy-duty training system. He was remembered as the man who refused to stay silent, the bodybuilder who dared to challenge both Arnold and the sport's leaders. Decades later, that single night in Sydney still haunts bodybuilding, and the wounds Mike Mentzer opened have never fully healed. The impact of the 1980 Olympia went far beyond one contest. It changed bodybuilding in ways that are still felt today. First, it affected the direction of the sport. Many top athletes left competition after that night. Frank Zane, Mike Mentzer, and others never returned to the Olympia stage. This opened the door for new champions in the 1980s, but also left fans wondering what could have been if those stars had stayed. Second, it hurt public trust. Fans and casual viewers began to see bodybuilding as political rather than fair. Instead of focusing on the physiques, people talked about backroom deals and favoritism. This damaged bodybuilding's image at a time when it was trying to become more mainstream. Finally, the event raised lasting questions about judging integrity. The IFBB did bring in new rules to make judging clearer and more consistent, but the shadow of 1980 never fully disappeared. Even today, when a controversial decision happens, people bring up Sydney as the prime example of politics in bodybuilding.